There are over 30 breweries and counting in Indianapolis, not to mention all the tap houses and tasting rooms. But Indy didn't always have a thriving craft beer scene. Join me for a beer as we take a look into the history of how homebrewing served as an impetus for today's modern craft beer revolution on this episode of Drinking with Beers. Did you know that homebrewing wasn't legal on a federal level until 1978? And it wasn't even legal in Indiana until 1999. I mean, technically, it's not like the police were gonna come bust down your door and arrest you for brewing beer inside of your house. You just couldn't take it outside of the home, so sharing with friends outside of them coming on over to your place was kind of a challenge, and you could forget home brew clubs or competitions. So up until homebrewing became legal, beer on a commercial scale was limited, especially in comparison to the variety that we have today. Really, all you could get and all people were used to drinking were standard lagers. It wasn't until homebrewing became legal did an interest for craft beer begin to grow. For this episode of Drinking with Beers, I had the opportunity to interview Anita Johnson, who is considered by many to be the mother of Indy's craft beer scene because she played such an integral part in helping shape our beer community by teaching others how to brew, and she also had a hand in shaping Indiana's beer laws to favor home brewing. In 1995, she opened Great Fermentations homebrew supply shop, where, as a homebrewer herself, she taught others how to brew, and many of those homebrewers went on to open breweries. Beer Brewery, for example, is owned by Darren Connor, who got his start learning how to homebrew at Great Fermentations, and actually ended up opening the brewery next to the homebrew supply shop. But it was there that he learned how to homebrew under Anita and developed his recipe for PDG Pale Ale, which stands for Pretty Damn Good, and it is pretty damn good. So Pale Ale is basically a milder, less hoppy version of an IPA. And by the way, Pale Ale was actually one of the first craft beer styles revived from an Old English version, which I'll talk more about in next week's video. I post a new video every Thursday, so make sure you are subscribed to get notifications on more indie beer and brewing highlights. So Darren eventually went on to open Beer Brewery in 2010 right next to Great Fermentations. And Dan Kraswicki over at Chili Water also got his start learning how to homebrew at Great Fermentations. And I actually just interviewed him. You can catch that story in last week's video. And there are several others which Anita will mention coming up in the interview. Hey, since the holidays are coming up, I thought it worth mentioning that homebrew kits make great gifts for your friends. Or for yourself, if you're feeling so inspired by this video, or even, I don't know, maybe for your favorite YouTuber. They even sell a kit to make your own PDG at home. So Anita had a huge part in helping shape Indy's craft beer scene. And she has since retired and is enjoying her time on the lake. And in 2018, her son, Bryan, took over. And here to tell us more about Indy's craft beer revolution are Anita Johnson and Bryan Johnson of Great Fermentations. Well, thank you, Anita and Bryan, for joining us today. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So I love that we picked out this Pale Ale from Beer Brewery because I was telling our viewers earlier that Pale Ale was one of those styles that a lot of home brewers, when they first started to get into it, that was a style that they were brewing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I know that you mentioned, Anita, before that Darren, who is the owner of Beer Brewery, the head brewer, that he developed this recipe at Great Fermentations.
He did. Darren worked for us for 9 years, and PDG was a beer that he developed for a homebrew event at the store, and it stands for pretty darn good or something similar. And, now at Beer Brewery, he has that beer. Now, I think he's tweaked it quite a bit since he was at Great Fermentations, but it began at Great Fermentations.
Yeah, and Bryan, somebody was telling me that you have homebrew kits to make a replica.
Yes.
PDG.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We PDG is one of our oldest running kits. I mean, I think that's probably one of the first ones that you guys made, Anita. We still sell it today.
Uh-huh.
It's not as popular as some of the newer style kits that are coming around, but it's a good staple. It's a good one. I always point people to that want an easy drinking pail, and I always tell them they can go next door to try a sample of it if they want to see what it's like.
Is it for people who are just getting into home brewing, is it a pretty easy beer to learn if you're just learning?
Yeah. I mean, all beer is pretty much the same process. It's just how many variables you throw into the day of brewing that can either make or break the beginning brewer. And so I tend to push them towards, easier kits like a PDG, where there's, not a ton of alcohol, not a lot of hop additions. There's no dry hopping. It's relatively straightforward. So yeah, it's an easy one to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Anita, I know you're retired from the business, and Bryan recently took over. Are you enjoying retirement, Anita?
I love it. We moved to a lake, and lake life is fabulous.
Awesome. So I know you had a big hand in making homebrewing legal in Indiana. So for those who for those who are watching, let's kind of just go through the timeline a little bit. So homebrewing used to be illegal, and it became legal on a federal level in 1978. And then in 1999 is when it became legal in Indiana, in part thanks to you, Anita. But you opened Great Fermentations in 95. I know that you weren't operating legally, so maybe you can explain that whole process and like how you were able to.
Really what we did was we made it legal in Indiana to be able to take your homebrew and your wine, homemade beer and wine, out of your house and take it to a homebrew club meeting, have a homebrew club meeting in a restaurant, which they couldn't do before. It made beer and wine competitions, homebrewed beer and wine competitions legal. So prior to that, the Indiana State Fair wine competition wasn't really legal in Indiana. And it made it up.
Hear that here.
Yeah. And it made giving out samples at the homebrew shop legal. And that was really important for us because the question back then was, is homebrewing legal? And is it any good? Those were the first two questions. And you can't answer, is it any good, truthfully, if you can't give them a sample of something that's good. So that was really important to us. And the Brewers Guild of Indiana, there was an intern at the State House who was a home brewer that made contact with a state representative that helped us. And Paul Edwards was a big help. So, it wasn't just me, but together we got it done. It took about 2 years to get it done. And luckily we had a rep that was into it, and we had somebody inside the State House that helped us through the process. Mm-hmm. So was it onerous? Not terribly, but it did take a long time.
Yeah. And I know it seems like the craft beer revolution was born out of home brewing.
It really was, because at the pioneers of home brewing, the Jim Cooks and the Larry Bells and the Pete from Pete's Wicked and Sierra Nevada, all those guys really started home brewing and then thought, wow, I'd like to do this commercially. Yeah. So it started with home brewers, but then you really needed to have a homebrew community to embrace the commercial craft beers, because most consumers back then really didn't know about craft beer. They were used to Bud Miller and Coors, and the palate hadn't been created yet. So you had home brewers that started brewing craft beer, and then you had home brewers that were kind of the ale evangelists, if you will.
Yeah.
And we went to restaurants and we demanded better beer, and everything grew. The homebrewing community grew, and the craft beer community grew. There's a really great symbiosis between the two.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it took a while because it sounds like there's an element of education, just kind of educating people on what craft beer is and, helping maybe develop that palate. What was it like back then? I know you said, there was kind of just the standard lagers available. So at any point, did you see sort of a shift, like a light bulb moment that people had? Or was it more just a long, slow, 10-year process?
Oh, it was a long, slow process.
Yeah.
Because, you really couldn't get a lot of craft beer. And now it's everywhere. It's a long, slow slog. But then suddenly it just became a part of a foodie movement. And now we've got craft beer everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it sounds like Great Fermentations was a big part of that education. Sort of like an incubator for...
We really were, because we went out into the community and we really were evangelists, or ale evangelists, as I call them, because you've got to get people to try it.
So Anita, tell me about and you can both tell me what was your first experience with craft beer like? What beer you had, and how did that change? I know Anita kind of changed your life, it sounds like. And Bryan, you were kind of just
I never
by
drank
default.
beer till I was 21, so I couldn't tell you. Just kidding.
What? Are you kidding? You made...
No, I think my first experience was just being at home with them and witnessing them enjoying. I distinctly remember Sam Adams being the beer of choice then. And I'm sure I had some sips then as a child. And then just going into college, once I was able to start, buying my own beer, just realizing what I kind of gravitated towards and what I enjoyed, because when I'd come home, it was always available to me. And I can't, Sam Adams always sticks out in my head as my first experience. But then, my wife and I moved to Colorado, Denver, right after we got married. And it was just it was everywhere out there. There were 2 or 3 years ahead of where Indiana was at the time. And just being surrounded by it every single day or weekend, whatever, when you'd go out, that kind of just really expanded my horizons in terms of what I enjoyed and what my palate enjoyed. So that's kind of my path, I guess, and part of the things that led me here. So.
Mm-hmm.
So you came back from Colorado and decided that you wanted to continue in your mom's footsteps.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was one of many reasons. It was probably, a heavy one, just knowing that I could be around that scene for a long time.
Yeah.
But that definitely played a part of it for sure.
So Anita, tell us about your first craft beer experience.
Oh, it was in a summer job. I was in a summer job in Chicago, and I found Augsburger Dark. And so every night I had Augsburger Dark, and I loved it. And it was kind of like the moment. And I thought, if this is beer, I love it. Before that, I didn't really like beer.
So you fell in love with craft beer. You decided, I want to make this at home, and you wanted to get your husband on board, so it was something you could do together. So you were home brewing for, a year and a half, and then you decided to open Great Fermentations.
Great Fermentations already existed, but it was going out of business. And my husband was a frequent visitor there. He kind of hung out there. He'd say, I'm going to Great Fermentations after work. And I knew it would be a while. The store was going out of business, and we didn't buy it. But what we did is we paid the former owner to kind of help us choose product and suppliers and things like that. And then we were on our own.
So sort of a smooth transition. It wasn't like a change of ownership. It was just more.
Yeah, he left the business, and we came in and rented the same space and used a similar name and just went on.
Okay. So I'm curious, because a lot of home brewers have gone on to open breweries. Why did you decide to take over Great Fermentations instead of just opening a brewery?
Well, we started the store and I saw the potential there
Mm-hmm.
and enjoyed what I was doing rather than opening a restaurant, which I know nothing about. And I'm not so sure I wanted to work as hard as a head brewer has to work.
Fair enough, fair enough. So Anita, you're sort of this pioneer to Indy. What does that look? You've definitely played a big role in Indiana's emerging craft beer scene. And, you know, somebody, I think it was an Indy Star article, mentioned that you were the brewer who taught every brewer how to brew. And I know it's not every brewer, but you've taught a lot of them. I know Darren, who brewed this beer, this PDG, works at Great Fermentations. Is kind of how he got his start. Who are some other people, specifically in Indianapolis, that have gone on to open breweries?
Oh gosh, Andrew Kastner worked at Great Fermentations for a short while. Sean Kessel first at Grand Junction, and then Taxman worked at Great Fermentations. Darren, Mark Havens at Daredevil. Bryan helped me out too.
Dan, Chili.
Oh,
Dan at Chili Water.
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed him in a previous video.
Scooter Bob.
Oh yeah, Scooter Bob at Big Love. Actually, that's what we called him. Let's see, who else? Dave Chichura at Ex Novo, formerly of Dale's Pale Ales. Or Dale's Pale, or what is it?
Oscar Blues.
Oscar
Yeah.
Blues, that's right. Tanya Cornett at Ben Brewing. She was a customer. I didn't teach her how to brew. She knew how to brew.
Hmm. So did you host homebrewing classes?
Yeah, we used to host them in the parking lot because our store wasn't big enough to have a classroom for brewing. And then when we got this space on 65th Street in Binford, we had it in the warehouse. And every time we had a class, we had to do a tornadic clean of the warehouse.
Sure.
We have our own classroom, so that's great. And the classroom,
Which I'm sitting in right now. This is the classroom.
yeah.
Okay.
So I taught a lot of classes, and we had local brewers come in and teach classes. So yeah, I taught a bunch.
Bryan, do you homebrew?
I do when I get a chance now with the kids. It's not as much as I used to, but maybe I feel like 2 or 3 a year now. It seems like at this point, yeah, if I'm lucky.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about getting into home brewing.
It's a lot of fun. It really is. It's a good portion of your day, and you get to, there's a lot of downtime. It's a lot of time just by yourself to think and just kind of reflect, and it's peaceful if you don't have kids tugging at your legs while you're doing it. It is a lot of fun though. It really is. And then ultimately see what the end result is. I think that's the biggest win at the end, is seeing that, the time and effort you put into it created what you're drinking or what your friends are drinking.
Yeah, I love that. So what are some of your fondest memories of your time at Great Fermentations? And either of you can answer this. I don't know, Bryan, if you...
I have a star on my head. This is from Great Fermentations. That's, I think...
Sorry. What?
I mean, I think we were just at the store as we normally were. Just, at the time it was it was all hands on deck. And so it'd be a weekend. I feel like my brother and I were both there. My dad was there. And I think we were just messing around like brothers do. And I vaguely remember a Muntins picture. Muntins is a maltster. They make malt. And I was just, trying to jump and hit the I don't know, what do you call that, above the door. And I hit a picture and I looked up and it cracked my head open, and like 7 or 8 blood all over the floor. It was a bad scene. But I always remember that it's right there. So that's one of my fondest memories, I would say, for sure.
You could have made some blood orange IPA.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
You always have Great Fermentations on your mind.
Nice one. So that's my fondest memory. What about yours,
Yeah,
Anita?
Anita, what's your fondest memory?
You know what? There are lots of, I feel like a proud mama to all of the people who homebrewed and were able to go on and become professional, or just a homebrewer that was really successful. Mm-hmm. There are so many of those. I have very fond memories of people who started and then became successful doing it. Yeah. So that's probably my fondest moment of Great Fermentations.
And it all came from fish sticks and mac and cheese, right?
It did. That's what I traded to learn how to brew. Now, mind you, I want to say that Bryan, in 1995, when you were 13.
7th grade, I feel like, yeah.
Store, and we were all so into homebrewing. Bryan at 13 or 14 read The Joy of Homebrewing.
I did, yes.
You did.
I thought it was cool. Well, and there was also a writer called Michael Jackson, I feel. And I always thought that was really interesting. I thought for a time it was Michael Jackson. Obviously, before the internet, we can actually look that stuff up.
Yeah.
But yes, I read that and many other things.
Mm-hmm.
You moonwalked right into a vat of beer.
Yes.
It was somewhat it was a little embarrassing when we take Bryan to a brewery and we'd give him a little sip, and one time he said, he's maybe 14 and he swirls a glass and sticks his nose in it and says, "I think this is phenolic."
I love it. You were a pro at 14.
Yes, I guess. Oh my gosh.
You remember that now, don't you?
I don't remember that.
So Anita, I know you're retired now. Do you ever miss it?
Oh, I miss the community because I'm far enough away that I'm not out and about anymore. And I still homebrew. I still have, I have 3 things on tap right now that I've brewed or made. Yeah, I miss it. But, Bryan, it was the great time for a transition. I was very relationship oriented. For me, it was, it was really, I was very lucky to have my avocation as my vocation. Mm. But as the business grew, the business needed more than what I could give it. And it was time for Bryan to take over. And I think he's done a fabulous job of taking something that existed and helping to make it and making it his own and taking it forward. And, it's not nearly as relationship oriented. It is more than a lot of places, but it's a big business and it takes a different skill set. And Bryan's perfect for that.
Bryan, did you always know that you wanted to eventually take over Great Fermentations? Like, how did
funny because it's like maybe two weeks after we moved home from Colorado, my dad, we were having a birthday party for my dad, and Paul Edwards' wife came up to me and she was congratulating me on taking over or moving home to take over the business. And she goes, "Bryan, I don't know if you knew this, but when you were little, you told me from behind the counter that you wanted to take over this business one day." I guess I always have. It was in the stars. I don't know.
You're just meant to be.
Yeah.
He knew how to run the cash register before I did.
I did.
Really?
Yeah.
So what year did you actually take over? I know it was recent. What was it this year?
No, it was, I think, 18, I think is when we finished things up.
2018.
Sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah. But I think I was running it for maybe a year before that, up into that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some things that tell us about the future of Great Fermentation. Kind of what's happening now? Where do you see the future of it heading?
Yeah. I mean, I think the future of Great Fermentations is partially the future of homebrewing, but partially just the future of retail. You know, retail right now is just getting clobbered from every which way you can think of, with companies like Amazon and Walmart kind of taking over people's attention and where they shop. And so, you know, we put a lot of our focus online to try to gain that customer that is shopping on the internet. And I have customers that live down the street, I mean, 5 minutes from here, that shop online and have it shipped to them. And we can sit here and push against the trend as much as we want, but the trend is not a trend. It's what we want as a people, how we want to shop. And so that's kind of where we're going. We're trying to offer as much as we can online, as much service as we can. And then on the homebrew side, just trying to be in front of all the new trends, making sure we have all the latest ingredients, latest equipment for the customers, because you know, they dictate what you do. And so we want to make sure that we have everything from, you know, your easy drinking Scott's Pale Ale, PDG, Sierra Nevada clones from, you know, way back when, up into, you know, your 10% East Coast, 15 ounces of hops, you know, juicy IPA. So we're trying to hit all those customers, because the environment has grown that much. You know, I hate to say back in the day, but, you know, just the palette was much smaller, and the ingredients used was so much smaller. And as commercial brewing has grown, the need to innovate and create new styles, new flavors has caused that. And so you're seeing that what homebrew used to kind of do for craft brew in terms of driving it, craft brewers is starting to kind of help drive homebrew with the styles they're coming up with, because they have to stay competitive and sell beer to their customers. And so we're kind of seeing this symbiosis again happen, and we're just trying to be there for our customers, whether it be they want to come into the store, they want to order online. We want to make sure they have what they want when they want it, and to make the beer that they want.
Back to speaking about innovation and, you know, keeping up and making sure you have those ingredients available. Trends are happening. What's the weirdest homebrew that you have ever come across?
It's really hard, because I feel like every so often a customer brings in something like, wow, that is just really good. I don't know. It's really hard to pin that down. But one thing that's really neat about homebrew is that you are not bound by whether or not the beer you're making is commercially viable. You can make whatever you want. And I tell people, don't make what people are telling you. Don't make what the craft breweries are selling. Make what you want to drink. And because of that, we just see all sorts of wacky stuff in here all the time. I can't honestly, there's just so many. I can't sit here and pull one out of my head that I just think of recently.
No wacky beer that's just really stood out, like, whoa, what was that?
I can think of a couple.
Yeah, go for it.
Black Walnut Stout. That was fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
Jalapeno peach wit, I think. That strawberry mead that the one scientist did, it was fabulous.
Those all sound fabulous.
It was one of those you just say, wow, this is incredible. And no commercial winery could have made that mead. It was so expensive.
And some of the wacky things our customers make, they could be like something that somebody would buy because it tastes good, but the cost to make it is so absurd that no self-respecting business would create that, because you wouldn't like yes, that'll be $20 a pint, please. So it's just like, that's just not going to happen. So that's what's really cool about homebrew is, I mean, you can create whatever you want, and that's why we love it.
Yeah. I feel so inspired to start homebrewing now. I've been thinking about it. I feel like you've convinced me. Maybe for Christmas I'll ask Santa for a homebrew kit.
Perfect.
You know, homebrewing is just an extension of cooking. And And, you know, while people are at home, they're cooking more. You see all these funny things about sourdough starters and blah, blah, blah. Great Fermentation sells those starters, but they also sell things like kombucha starters and cheese making supplies and mead and juice from Chile and Italy. Really, Great Fermentations isn't just beer. It's a whole lot of things that are fermented.
I would say we're primarily beer focused, but we have a heavy customer base that's into winemaking as well. So, I'd say we're probably 60-70% beer, but lots of people love making wine. We have a lot of crossover too. We also have cheese making. I would say a lot of those kind of sub hobbies haven't taken off as much. The one that probably has taken off a bit more is kombucha. We're seeing kind of, I wouldn't say a surge, but a rise in interest in kombucha and the health benefits it provides. We have started to make our own around here, and a lot of us have started to drink it. It's good, but I don't think it's going to be anything like beer and wine making is. And so that's the majority of our business. That's what we're best at. But we invite anybody here that makes anything fermented. We can help them. They can teach us. It's a community. We're trying to learn from each other. So, in terms of other things, we got, knowledge, not only knowledge, but experience, products, and then just friendly staff. One of the things we love about here is just the customer service and just working with our customers every day and creating a welcoming environment. Because a lot of times from a beginner standpoint, it can be intimidating. You walk in here and we're talking about crystal malts and melanoid and hop additions and racking. And a lot of people have no idea what you're talking about. And so it can be daunting and scary for some for beginners. And so we try to make it as approachable as possible with customer service, good attitude. We have people bring their kids in here too. We like to make it a family friendly place. That's what Anita did when she ran the place, and that we're going to keep doing that because it's the right thing to do. It creates the right community here that we enjoy.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned a lot of people are buying online now, but do you still have, I'm sure you still have people come in, but.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's still people that love to come into the store and talk to you, and we love it too. If I look at, the many things I like about working here, mm-hmm. As part of my job, I'm stuck behind a desk quite a bit with the amount of stuff I have to do. But the number one thing I like to do is just crawl out of my hole and go up to the front and actually talk to customers and help them. And so we still love having them in here, and it just kind of makes part of the job fun. And so, yeah, tons of people still come in here for sure.
I want to commend you on your customer service, because when I was studying for my sister-own exam and I was learning about ingredients, I was like, what perfect place to go than, a homebrew supply shop. Let's go to Great Fermentations. And I went with LJ, who works at Newfields. And Tom took us back into the room where you have all the malts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we spent, I swear it was hours. Like, I think we were in there for at least half a day. And Tom was just every single malt type just bagging in these little tiny bags. And then it was time for the hops. So then we went and we did little tiny
them. Yep.
Yes, but he just really took time, and this was really super helpful. And
and that's what we try to do around here. We try to be patient and work at your pace. And a lot of it's a learning experience when you come in here. A lot of this is sensory that you cannot get on a website, and so it's somewhat a grocery store, but at the same time it's different from a grocery store because you can't try food at the grocery store and smell stuff. You get looked at funny when you do that. So here, you can sample some of the grain and see what it's going to make your beer taste like. Smell those hops, see what that flavor profile is going to be. Sample some wine or sample some beer that we've made. So it's all about the experience, and that's why we still love the physical store, because it brings an element of the hobby and the community that you just can't replicate online. I don't care what technology is out there, it's impossible to replicate that.
Right, and if you're just getting into home brewing, how are you going to know what a chocolate malt really is? How is that going
exactly.
to be? Go in, smell it, and talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the people who work at Great Fermentations are open to answer questions. So it sounds like there's no reason to be intimidated going in.
And that's what we try to do. We try to make it as unintimidating, if that's a word, as possible.
Bryan, you also hire from your customer base, so the people who work for you are well versed in brewing and winemaking and everything that you do before they even get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I'm looking at our staff. I think every single one of them was at one point a customer. So that's very true.
What is some advice that you offer to home brewers who are just getting into this as a hobby?
Take the plunge and don't be afraid. As Anita always said, it's if you can make mac and cheese, you can make homebrew. And also be bold. There's so much information online about what you should and shouldn't do with beer. And no one broke through with anything by following the rules. You got to break some rules every once in a while. So, be bold, dive in, don't be afraid, and break some rules sometimes, because you never know what you're going to find out. And then just forgive yourself. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. And we get a lot of people in here that are, worried about every single step of the process. And there's a common saying, it's called relax, don't worry, have a homebrew. And that's what we try to remind people. It's just relax. You're making beer. It's fun. And you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from those mistakes, and you're going to get better with time. So don't be afraid. Dive right in and do it.
Can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs.
I still can't make an omelet. Maybe I got the wrong pan. It sticks to the pan too much.
You know what's good with omelets? Hefeweizens.
There we go.
Really?
Yeah. Hefeweizen's a good breakfast beer, I guess, if you're eating beer for breakfast.
Light starter. Yep. We have a Crystal Weiss on tap right now that one of our employees made. Yeah.
So
we're not serving samples right now due to COVID. So all the beer we make is just, we have a stockpile of beer right now.
Is it all for just the employees?
I mean, it's typically for customers to sample, but right now we allow our employees one shift beer a day. So around 5:30, they're allowed to shift beer. And so that's what they pull from. It's funny, not funny. At the beginning of the pandemic, we got someone broke into our cooler out back where all of our beer and hop. They didn't steal any of the kegs of beer. They didn't steal any of the CO2 tanks. They didn't steal any of the regulators. They just stole some Concord grape concentrate. So I don't know, maybe
a very specific reason for.
I know, right? It was and I think we had some Miller High Life back there for evaluation purposes. But yeah, so I mean, we've got lots of beer back there still.
That's wild. Are you sure it wasn't just a raccoon or something?
Oh no.
No.
Unless they had some razor sharp teeth and gnawed through the lock on the door. Definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stop by the store.
Yeah.
I think, Bryan, that you do something that I think that I didn't do, and I think you make homebrewing more simple, because I think the early people made it super hard and not nearly as approachable as you do now. And I think that's a big difference between back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there was something good about though, because everything that I do and the homebrewers do now, it is based on a foundation that was laid by a lot of those early pioneers. And, the ones that sat there countless hours sampling beers from Germany and figuring out how do they do what they do. And a lot of the knowledge that we have now is because of that inability to vary from process or ingredients. And so a lot of that we do now is because of some of the stickler mentality of some of the early brewers. And we're allowed to kind of branch off from that and to do more things with it now. So I don't think we could have what we have now without what we had at the beginning.
Something that you might add for Amy is kind of a call out to the brewers who had a bad batch and quit brewing, or had kids and stopped brewing. Mm-hmm. Because there are a lot of those customers out there that should come back.
Yep. And we've seen a lot of them come back throughout this pandemic. I've seen I've seen orders from customers that haven't been here in years, and they're
I
just
saw
kind
them
of
too.
dusting off those brew kettles and, you know, getting the engines revved back up. You know, this hobby has ups and downs, and, you know, you get into it hot and heavy and you're early to mid 20s and you get married, you have kids, your priorities change a little bit. And this just happens with any hobby, you know, like you get married and have kids, what time do you have for hobbies? And so you kind of see that they go down, and then, you know, kids get older, you get back into it. And we're kind of seeing a lot of that happen right now, as some of these people that got out of the hobby 5-6 years ago, kids are older, they're at home stuck with nothing to do. Why not dust off that brew kettle and start brewing again?
Yeah.
And it's a great way to pass the time. I mean, I've said that before. It's just, it's so relaxing, at least for me. But it's a creative outlet. I mean, this is what's really cool about this hobby. We have artists and scientists that do it. And so it's a creative outlet for those artist types, and then it's a scientific outlet for those, you know, those nerdy chemist types. And so it's got so many different things it offers for those different types of people. And it's just a great way to spend the time when you're stuck at home right now.
And there is something, like you said earlier, so satisfying about something you made that you get to sit back and enjoy and share with
100%.
them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, this hobby is really all about the joy of creation. And think about the recipe, and you design the recipe, and you go into the homebrew shop and you have that whole experience, and you go out and brew it, and then you nurture it, and then you package it, and then you share it with the neighbors at the end of the driveway, and a whole lot of enjoyment in that whole process that you don't get when you buy a 6-pack out of a cooler. You go home and drink it.
Your heart and soul is in it.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, thank you, Anita and Bryan, so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
Raising up.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I finished mine, so I have to go get another one, I guess, now.
Cheers, though. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired to take up homebrewing. And when I get done shooting this video, I might actually head on over to Great Fermentations and pick up a kit. You can also order online. They do make really great gift ideas for the holidays. You know, maybe you're already a homebrewer and you've got some great homebrewing stories you'd like to share. I would love to hear them. The good, the bad, the ugly. Let me know in the comments below. I'm Amy Beers, and until we drink again, cheers.